Hi. Hello. Boy, it's very hot. It's actually morning at almost 8 a.m. and still it's really hot. Yeah, it just like really I'm kind of like a sweating inside. And I'm actually at the rooftop by the way. Like this is kind of like a legit rooftop. Okay, like literally sky is actually over here. But still the heat is too much that literally it kind of like a feel like warm. And at 8 a.m. And it's just the beginning. The summer heat in India, oh my god. All right, so should we start? Hello, this is the My Artifact episode number 3000, not 3000, it's 4000, uh, 4009. Today's date is uh, today's date is April 19, 2026. It's been almost like a morning at 8:05 a.m. All right, let's just jump into the question. All right. All right. So, question is, how will I ensure empathy instead of trolling? That is really good question. Okay. Okay. First of all, like, okay, let's talk about this book. Well, I don't know why I'm kind of like really showing this book again and again. Okay. Okay. Most of people kind of like say this thing that ki, why am I kind of like writing question here? Like instead of have a book and kind of like something the root question in there. Like why do you kind of like a root question in here? The answer is that ki usually this kind of like a book are I always with me with all the time. Okay, yeah. And when I read, I see this kind of like a question. Like what exactly is this thing now? If I carry the notebook, okay, yeah. That notebook doesn't really add any kind of like some value. Why? Because of that key, it's just notebook. But when I wrote the question in here, so while I was kind of like reading something, so right now I'm here. Okay, so I'm kind of like reading something and kind of like I had a question in here, so I was kind of like thinking about the question that key. Okay, like how would I supposed to do that? Like basically this question is kind of like actually popped inside of me again and again, so that's why I wrote the question. But instead of I write the question in notebook, then notebook I didn't really open that much. Usually I open the book as much more than kind of like a something than notebook is just for the writing stuff, and obviously how much space it takes, it's just that's it. And for that small thing, why do I need a kind of like a notebook? That's why I write the question in here in the book, so that it kind of like gets so much exposure and things and that. Okay. And also another thing is that he obviously I write this question in here is because of that he, like I have this all the question in the mobile phone, but still while recording I can't do this thing, so that's why I wrote the question in here. By the way, if you are want to know what exactly is this book is really good. Okay, yeah. Like the amount of value that I'm getting from this book, oh my god. Okay, yeah. Like I don't know, sometimes like I was a kind of like a some particular person that book is a kind of like a simply enormous enemy. Like I don't know how to supposed to explain this thing. I never really imagined myself that I could able to be read this kind of like a simply just text heavy book. And I am kind of like seeing those transformation in last like a 3 months. Yeah, like since the beginning of this year I started reading the book, and I am reading this kind of like a very heavy book, and I'm getting the value. I don't know how to supposed to explain this thing, because I was completely against with the book, reading the book and things and that and that. And sometimes I just kind of like something really surprised by myself regarding about if I'm kind of like being really continuous. And let me tell you one thing, na, like it's not really that I'm reading all the time. No, I'm just reading only 20 minutes. That's it. Just 20 minutes. Just I read at least like a 2-3 pages. That's it. Not too much. But just being consistent, like I'm just being consistent. And I don't know, like the people told that ki read the book, it add value in my life. I never really understand that concept, but until and unless I realized that ki okay, let's start reading a book. And when I started reading a book, boy, I don't know. It's just like that, na, $1 million kind of like a knowledge that I'm getting that I never really get from anywhere at all. Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to explain this thing. Okay, what is actually that book is actually offering that none of the media is not offering. Okay, so okay, so let me tell you one thing. Okay, I'm gonna kind of like a talking about a little bit of off topic. Okay, so let's just say this is a kind of like a some book. Okay, book is providing knowledge, information, value. Okay, same thing that a mobile does, same thing that TV does, same thing that every entertainment media does. Okay, but there is a kind of like a slightly difference. Okay, what is that like slightly difference? Okay, let's talk about the Harry Potter. Like, I haven't really read the Harry Potter book, but let's try to understand the Harry Potter book and Harry Potter movie. Okay, so in the Harry Potter movie, you actually kind of like simply connect with more because there is a lot of elements over there, visual elements, lot of things. Like basically, this thing when you try to imagine a story, a Harry Potter movie kind of like a let that imagination makes it kind of like a very easy to do that. Okay, and and that's why we connect movie much more because of that. Ki we are human, we are actually kind of like a think about images point of perspective. So that's why just like that, na ki movies are connect more. Like a Harry Potter movie, we actually connect more. But in the book is very difficult to connect. Why? Because it's just a text. Like literally this book is kind of like just a text, nothing really at all. There is no image at all, so it's just a text. And because of it's just a text, it's a very difficult to connect. We can't connect with the book that much. Okay, it really required a kind of like some very special skills to understand the what exactly book is actually offering. Okay, let me tell you one thing now. I can read, you can read, anyone can read the book. There is nothing really kind of like a some difference in that thing. But the amount of information that I get from this book and the amount of information that you get from this book is completely different. Why? Okay, I am not really consider myself a heavy reader. I started reading for almost like a 3 months. Okay, since the beginning of this year, and I'm getting that much amount of value in myself. Oh yeah, imagine the people who are kind of like reading a book for a decade and things on that and that. They are getting a kind of like a so much information that yeah, like basically I don't know how I'm supposed to explain this thing. It's a kind of like a thing that na ki a video, a movie, kind of like a let your imagination flow as much as better. But it does not go in detail. Okay, does not go in detail, and that is a book actually offering. The book is go into the detail, a very tiny detail. Uh, I never really read the Harry Potter book, but I'm gonna tell you the snippets about it. Okay, so in the movie, okay, in the Harry Potter movie, Harry Potter, like before the Hogwarts, Harry Potter was actually going to the school. Okay, and he was kind of like a bullied over there. Okay, in the normal school. Okay, so this particular section kind of like a very clarifyly, like very like a clearly wrote in the book. J.K. Rowling wrote this particular section very clearly regarding about the Harry Potter. How does he bullied before the Hogwarts? He was kind of like a go to the normal school. But in the movie, that particular segment trim out. Okay, literally trim out and kind of like a focus on Hogwarts story. Why does movie do that? Because they have a constraint. They have a like a book doesn't really have constraint. Like they have just kind of like add multiple pages after pages after pages, and even after the book end, they kind of like create another book. Okay, so is this thing na ki book kind of like get more in detail, and they can because obviously is this thing our mind and imagination and things and that. But movies and videos and YouTube videos are not how they have kind of a little bit of constraint regarding about will people will gonna watch the video that much longer period of time, or kind of like a people might gonna get bored. There are a lot of constraint in the video format, so video usually kind of like a trim out that segment. Okay, some like a basically just focus on the kind of like a story and trim out the unnecessary parts. So in the Harry Potter movie, they didn't really mention the Harry Potter kind of like a beginning story of before the Hogwarts he kind of like went to the normal school. This kind of like a segment complete trim in the movie. Okay, now why am I kind of like saying this thing? It's a kind of like a thing that na ki um books is a kind of like a telling a story in very much detail. Okay, and because of it is story is kind of like a telling in very much in detail, you actually connect with the character or you actually connect with the book very deeply. Okay, It's a very hard to explain this thing. Okay, yeah. And for the people who never really read the book, they might not gonna understand this thing, because this kind of like a particular thing you have to experience. It's not a kind of like a things that "Ki, I'm telling you and you understand." It's not. The amount of value that you get from the book is only and only get when you read the book. Huh. Even if you started reading the book, you might not gonna get any kind of like a value. Because of that, you just started reading a book. Literally just like that. And there is a lot of concept in the book that I'm reading right now, but sometimes I don't really understand. Even if I'm read 20 minutes, it's very hard for me, but still I'm getting a little bit of information in tiny details and things and that. Okay. But is this thing na ki, like the people who kind of like a somebody heavy reader, those people are connect with the book very rapidly. Like that's why there is a phrase mentioned is this thing that ki books are the one of the best friend. Okay, yeah, because they are kind of like a telling a story in such a tiny detail that just like 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 best friend does, when your best friend kind of like a telling about that ki why things happen, like very small story that doesn't really make sense at all. It's kind of like that, but in very much detail. Like that is actually book offer. And I don't know. Oh yeah, but still, there is a kind of like a problem that I'm kind of like experiencing. Okay, I'm from India, and I'm speaking English. I could read English. I could understand English, but there is a difference between my English and the book English. Okay, yeah. So basically, is this thing Steve Corey is a kind of like a some American author. Is it American? Well, probably it's the American author, na? Author from Good, Great, and Things. Yeah, it is actually, there is no mention regarding about that the author that we came from where, but probably is maybe American author, because the way that the mention the incident is actually from US, so probably I might gonna think that it's from US. Okay, yeah. So Steve Corey is a kind of like a written the book in English language, but the English is a bit more difficult for me to understand. Because of that, it's a American English. British English is a even more difficult, like literally just like even more difficult. Their English is a kind of like a bit more different. The way that they word that they use to tell a story, it is little bit of complicated. Oh yeah. Okay, why is that complicated? Okay. Um. Okay, so let me kind of like tell you things. Okay, yeah. Even if we know the same language, we are not understand the language. Okay, let me tell you how. I am from India, and I my mother tongue language is a Marathi. Okay, yeah. So let's take a kind of like a my state is a Maharashtra. I live in Maharashtra. I live in Wardha city. Okay, Wardha is a kind of like a central part of India. Okay, yeah. And there is a Pachim Maharashtra, West Maharashtra. There is a kind of like a Bombay, Mumbai, Pune, kind of like these are kind of like a coastal area. Okay, in the coastal area, they speak English. Sorry, they speak Marathi very differently. And in here, in my Vidarbha area, we speak Marathi very differently. Okay, our accent is actually changed, and the word that we use are actually very changed. Okay, like let's just say in here, okay, we actually says, like in Vidarbha we actually says मले तुले कायले बे हो न साले तुला समजत नाही का हो न तर मी चाललो इकडे तिकडे. Like they use a kind of like a Marathi term, something like a little bit of rough. Okay, rough, like a male tule things and that. But if you went to Pachim Maharashtra, there is a kind of like Marathi is far more refined. Okay, yeah, mala, tula, kashala. Okay, these are very small word, but there is a massive difference when you heard. Okay, yeah. In Vidarbha area, the where I live, the Marathi language is bit more kind of like a something very much. It's a Marathi language, but it's a kind of like a little bit of like a kind of like a something authoring, male tule, like a basically little bit of vulgar language. If I'm saying, I'm not kind of like a criticizing the language. I don't really have any kind of like a proper word for that, but it's a kind of like a things that na ki it's represent like a authoring, like a someone kind of like a give you authority to somebody. So that's why it's kind of like a or dictate, like this kind of like a somebody Marathi represent in Vidarbha area. Okay, where I live. But if you went to coastal area, there is a Marathi language, same language, but very polite. Mala, tula, kashala. Okay, yeah. Even if those people are kind of like a giving the gali to somebody, like a to like a आई झवाड्या. Okay, yeah, like these are kind of like some the gali means like that ki teasing words, okay, are very much polite as compared to us. Like our teasing word is like brutally like yeah gandhi mother choda. Okay, this is kind of like a very okay. I'm kind of like a giving you the kind of like a language barrier, even if the same language is kind of like a very different tone. Okay, yeah. Same thing with the English. Okay, so English in India are very beginner. Okay, yeah. Let's just say kind of like a beginner, intermediate, and expert. Okay, yeah. So basically, is this thing the English that we use today in India are very much refined. Okay, like basically Indian accent are very much refined English. Okay, you literally kind of like said like the like basically my accent. Take my accent kind of like a bit more like a very refined. Okay, yeah. If you went to US, their English language is intermediate. Okay, intermediate. Okay, intermediate means like a little bit of kind of like a somebody is this thing. They use very complex word. Like basically, I'm gonna say I am nice. Okay, I'm feel really good. They will gonna say like a like a like I feel like a extraordinary. Like a, I don't know. There's something kind of like a use such a word that just like a very unique. Like a very kind of like a somebody very higher than nice. Okay, yeah. This intermediate level. Okay, and then there is a British English, European English. European English is a kind of like a extreme level of English. Okay, yeah. Their word is a very like a, every word is a kind of like a feel like poetic. Okay, yeah. Like basically in the poem, or kind of like a author or any kind of like a poet use such a word that's kind of like a, somebody that resonate a lot of people. So that's why they use very heavy word. Okay, that's what I kind of like realized that ki British English is a kind of like a bit more heavier to understand. At least for kind of like something our Indian English is very heavier to understand because it's just lot of not only the accent, like they have kind of like a British accent, but with the British accent they are kind of like the word that they use is a very much like a very extreme, okay, extreme level that we don't understand. At least Indian people don't understand. Okay, yeah. I download the J.K. Rowling book, okay, in PDF, and I started reading. Okay, yeah, I read at least like a 10 pages. I don't understand anything. Okay, yeah, that's why because of J.K. Rowling is from British. Okay, yeah, and he wrote the novel in kind of like a British English, and the word that they use over there is far more heavier than I can't understand. Okay, yeah, like why am I kind of like telling this thing? It's depend on that who you are and what kind of like a book you are reading. Okay, yeah. Let me tell you one thing. I'm kind of like India, South Asian country. Okay, yeah. Our English is not really that much cooked properly, so we don't really understand English that much better. Like basically is this thing. Same goes with the Philippines. Same goes with the Indonesian people. Same goes with the Vietnam people. We don't really understand English that much. We understand English, but not really that much. Okay, yeah. If you put a lot of heavy words, still it's very difficult to understand. That's what kind of like a thing. This is a kind of like a book. Steve Collin, maybe American probably author. Okay, yeah. So his word of language is intermediate. Okay, yeah. I understand. It's not really that like it's not really that I couldn't understand, but like a little bit difficult to consume. Okay, yeah. Let me tell you one thing. Understand and consume is a very different word. Okay, let me kind of like a somebody. Let's take a Urdu word. आपके अल्फाज अफलातून. Okay, so I kind of like a represent word like a word means आपके अल्फाज means a word. Okay, in Hindi we call shabd, in Urdu called alfaz. Okay, yeah. Aflatun means like that beautiful. Okay, like बहुत अच्छे. um so basically what I realized that now Urdu is a kind of like a something very poetic Hindi, but very much kind of like a something very much kind of like a something very much like a beautiful. Okay, something like that. Okay, so basically is this thing na ki if the Pakistan kind of like a somebody author who wrote the kind of like a book regarding about the Urdu language, his language is a very much kind of like a very much poetic, especially from Indian point of perspective. I am kind of like a somebody, let's just say a Pakistan reporter who kind of like a reporting news. The word that they use, Hindi word, but the word that they use is a very much poetic, like alfaz, matam chha gaya, yeah, like basically like a mulk, like instead of country they use mulk. Hamare mulk mein, like I don't know this word, but this sounds so like really like wow. Okay, yeah, that's why Urdu is kind of like one of my favorite language, because it's a kind of like a thing that it's a very refined language of Hindi. Okay, yeah, and it's like my god, it's way more beautiful. Okay, yeah, in a poetic sense, my god, it does like, yeah. So this is what kind of like a things. Okay, yeah, it understand, but it's kind of like a very difficult to understand. Okay, yeah. So this is what I don't know. Sometimes I just talk about something that just doesn't really make sense at all. I don't know. Okay, yeah. Should we jump to the question? It's been almost like a 20 minute. Okay, and I'm talking about all this kind of like stuff. Okay, yeah, let's just jump into the question. Okay, just kind of like I'm giving you advice. Okay, read book. Okay, but it's just like that na ki don't read too much. Like if you are kind of like a beginner, just read 20 minute. Okay, just read 20 minute. Bought any kind of like a book, or maybe kind of like a borrow from somebody, and read just 20 minute, but every single day. Okay, every single day, just kind of like a sit out the rooftop, or maybe kind of like some things, and just kind of like a read the book just 20 minute. Okay, yeah. At the beginning it was kind of like a very difficult. Even if you don't really understand, just try to understand or just read. Okay, it's a kind of like a very essential thing. 20 minutes is too much for me, too much for you, then just 10 minutes, but read the book. The amount of value that you get from the book is far more bigger than the amount of value that you get from movies or YouTube videos or any kind of like that. Same information catering, but the gravity, the depth that you feel in book is far much bigger than a video or things and that. Video does not kind of like provide you that depth, because it's not really meant for that. Okay, yeah, the emotional depth. Okay, like how the scene is actually offering, how I was feel, the book kind of like somebody explain that scenario much more vividly as compared to a movie. Okay, yeah. Okay, there is a kind of like a scene that I want to kind of like somebody explain. Okay, yeah. So should I? Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing, there is a kind of like a one particular segment in the Harry Potter book. Okay, yeah, I didn't really read the book, by the way. I just read the snippets, okay, in the PDF. Okay, so there is a scene, okay, in the movie. I'm gonna tell you the movie reference, okay, so that you might gonna understand. Okay, so basically is this thing, when the like basically is this thing when Ron kind of like a destroy the Horcrux. Okay, like basically is this thing in a 7.1, okay, Deathly Hallows Part 1, there is a kind of like a scene where Ron kind of like a destroy that kind of like a something, the Horcrux. Okay, because that Horcrux is kind of like impact Ron so much. Okay, there is a scene called kind of like Harry Potter and Hermione kissing together, like this kind of like a scene. Okay, yeah. So they are kind of like some things, and Ron kind of like a have this kind of like a Gaurav Garudwar talwar. Okay, he have that talwar. He kind of like a destroy that kind of like a Horcrux. Okay, yeah. And basically then Harry Potter and Ron kind of like a connect and things and that. Then next day, okay, next day when Hermione wake up, okay, yeah, and that scene, okay, in the movie that scene was kind of like a that scene was kind of like a somebody like a developed very like a very casual way. Okay, like basically Hermione is a kind of like a very much angry towards Ron and things and that. Okay, and basically is this thing that he entire scene is actually like that scene in the movie was really good, by the way. Okay, yeah, it represent all the people emotion, like Harry, Ron and Hermione, what they are kind of like a feel and things and that they kind of like a somebody express in the movie much more like better. Yeah, okay, but in the book the same scene is almost like a 20 page of scene, like 10 page of scene probably. Okay, 10, not 10 page, sorry, not 10 page. Okay, yeah, just maybe a kind of like only 5 pages. Okay, they kind of like a deliberate the entire scene how that actually happened. Okay, yeah, like basically the next morning actually happened, the cold winter, the kind of like a Harry was shivering, the Ron was actually shivering, they are kind of like a waiting for Hermione. And when the Hermione kind of like a wake up, and when she saw the Ron, she is very satisfied but she very angry at the same time. And like there is a lot of stuff and there is a lot of cold at the morning. Okay, yeah. And she was kind of like a looking at the kind of like a assembly Ron, and kind of like a, she just not stopping to like not stopping to look at the Ron. Okay, yeah. There is a kind of like a lot of depth in her. Okay, yeah. Like she feel really good but she's angry at the same time. She don't know how she should supposed to be kind of like a things. Okay, yeah. Then she kind of like a look at the Gaurav Garudwar Talwar on his hand. Okay, yeah. Like that scene. Okay, I don't leave, like I read like a couple of year ago. Yeah, I read that scene. Okay, yeah, in that movie, and that scene was so in detail, like so in detail that movie does not kind of like even if there is a kind of like a some producer who kind of like a try to replicate that scene in the movie, it does not, because in the movie that scene was so deeply written. Okay, yeah, like every emotion that Hermione kind of like a feel at that moment, that represent in the movie. Okay, yeah, that's what I'm saying, the depth. Okay, the depth that you connect with the kind of like a something in the book. Okay, you actually connect with more in the movie too, but still in the book you actually connect more. Okay, yeah, that is what kind of like a book offer, dude, and that's like a something that like really beautiful. Sometimes I just like, should I ask the question? It's been almost like a 26 minutes. I will not gonna ask question. I will gonna just talk about the books and things and that and that. Yeah, but there is nothing really left to talk. Okay, I already kind of like a talk about everything. Okay, just read the book. Okay, yeah. You at the beginning you might not like at the beginning, but be consistent. Maybe just start from 5 minutes. Set the alarm for 5 minutes and just start reading just 2 pages. Just 2 pages, not really that much, but be consistent. Okay, yeah. And amount of the value that you get, the movies and the YouTube video is not offering you that. All right, is it I should supposed to be end here. Thank you.